Welcome to Business Line's State of the Economy podcast, where you'll find insight, analysis, and the story behind the numbers.
Hey all, welcome to Business Line's State of the Economy podcast on agriculture. India is the largest milk producer, producing nearly 240 million tons of milk. The country is home to over 60 million cows, 3 times more than what Europe rears. However, the dairy industry is highly unorganized, fragmented, and lacks technological advances. Despite this, the dairy sector is a vital one for the rural economy. What's happening in the dairy sector and what are the issues it is facing? To tell us more about the sector and its features, we have with us Mr. Srideep N Kesavan, CEO of Heritage Foods Ltd. Welcome to Business Line's State of the Economy podcast on agriculture, Mr. Srideep Kesavan. A lot of developments are taking place in the dairy sector. How has milk production been the current fiscal?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Subramani, for having me on the show. You're absolutely right. Dairy is probably the most happening food subsector within the food industry. And the industry has been growing steadily for quite a long time, especially on the consumption side. We have seen steady growth ever since COVID. COVID has been an inflection point for the industry. But on the milk production side, while if you look at a long-term average, maybe let's say from 2011-12 till 2022-23, a 10-year CAGR would be about 5.5 to 5.6% CAGR of milk production. We see that slowing down. If you look at the last 3 years CAGR since COVID, it's only 4.5%. And the reported numbers from the government side for the last financial year stands at 3.6%. So, which actually shows a 10-year CAGR of 5.5, for a 3-year CAGR of 4.5, and 1-year growth of 3.5%. Is not a very encouraging sign as far as the production numbers are concerned. Of course, this year's number has not been published by the government. So I do not have any authentic sources on this, but on ground, what we hear is that the production trend continues to be around 3.5 to 3.6%, even in this year. I believe it's primarily because of the slowdown of the buffalo milk production in the country. If you look at India's milk production, roughly around 52 to 53% contribution comes from cow milk, and 45 to 46% comes from buffalo milk. And of course, the rest is goat milk and others. With such a huge contribution coming from buffalo milk, and buffalo milk has been either been flat, not growing, or slightly degrowing at a rate of 0.5 to 1%. So even though cow milk production is growing at a rate of 7.5 to 8% CAGR in the last 2 or 3 years, the weighted average growth has come down to 3.5, 3.6%.
So many dairies, including Amul, have raised the prices. Are prices of milk and its products headed higher? What's really happening?
Yeah, I guess the rate of increase of milk prices has been in line with the consumer price inflation. In fact, actually, if you look at, again, here, I request the listeners to look at the long-term averages and not look at 1-year phenomenon. If you look at the CPI, the dairy or the food basket, if you look at it, dairy price inflation actually has been lower or slower than the food basket inflation. In fact, on the consumer side, for the last from the period between March of 2023 to December of 2024, which is a good long 19 to 20 months, the prices had not increased at all across most parts of the country. And same is the case with the dairy farmer as well. On the farm procurement side, the prices did not change for a very long time. So it's but natural that we will have some price increases. because eventually the price has to keep in line with the cost inflation as well. Recently, in the last 2 or 3 months since December, we have seen about 5 to 6% increase in terms of raw milk procurement prices, that is farm level prices, and roughly around 3% has been the increase on the consumer side. I would say these are very nominal, given that we haven't seen price increase for almost 2 years.
Though we are the number one milk producer in the world, we still lag in yield per animal yield. What can we do to improve milk yield in cattle?
Yeah, this is a billion-dollar question. I see. In India, there are close to about 8 crore dairy farmers, right? And a large percentage of these dairy farmers and dairy animals are a captive for captive consumption. Even today, if you look at it, about 45% of the milk that gets produced in the country, out of the 45% is the 240 million metric tons, gets consumed by the producer farmer himself for the household consumption. Only about 55% enters the consumption market. That's about 130 million tons. And when we look at it, so I'm speaking with the data that we have as far as the marketable surplus is concerned. Roughly, what we see is the cost of production in India continues to be upwards of 30 or 32 rupees per liter, which is very high, extremely high. Now you compare that with Oceania, which is basically primarily Australia or New Zealand. In those countries, they're able to produce milk at 35 cents per liter. 35 cents per liter is cheaper in absolute compared to India. And primarily, this is because of the productivity of the animal. And when we did a survey of the roughly 2 lakh animals that we have in our system among our farmers, which are producing at this point in time, what we realize is roughly around 70% of these would be exotic breed, Heifers and HF and Jersey. And even there, the productivity is not more than 12 or 13 liters per day. The average, weighted average production that we see across the animals that we have in our system is in the range of 8 to 10 liters per day. And this I'm talking about cows. The productivity of buffaloes are even less. Primarily, productivity of animals depend on just two things. One, the breed of the animal. Number two is the dairying practices, which is basically the feed practices. How do you rear the animal, etc. So while breeding is definitely a sure shot way to improve the productivity over a period in time, moving from, let's say, an indigenous breed, which produces 6 to 8 liters per day, to an exotic breed like HF or Jersey will improve the productivity to 12 to 13 liters per day, for sure. But then the bigger lever for improving productivity actually sits with the feeding practices. On an average, a cow requires about 50 or 60 kilogram of feed in a day. Ideally, if you want the animal to produce about 15 liters of milk, you should be providing at least 2 kilogram of concentrated feed with high proteins in it. Today, at Heritage, we have a ratio of about 60 gram per liter, which is one third of where it should be, right? So if you feed the animal just one third of what it requires, then that's a big problem. You will not get the productivity. Similarly, while green fodder and dry fodder, contributes a large percentage of the feed for the animal requires about 40 kilogram of green and dry fodder. Many a times, the farmers cut corners actually, and we see that the animal doesn't get the kind of quantities that it requires in a day. Because at the end of the day, the green and dry fodder also costs 1 to 2 rupees per kg, which means that if you feed the animal 40 or 50 kgs, you need to spend about 100 rupees a day for that as well. The third aspect is for a balanced ration. food ration, you also need to provide 10 to 20 kilogram of silage. Silage is excellent for rumination and high protein availability. But silage costs 6 to 7 rupees per kg. And if you feed 20 kg per day, that's again another 120 rupees. So if a farmer is willing to set aside 200 rupees per day for an animal, you can definitely get the animal to produce 15 or 18 liters per day. We have seen that happening. But it is a chicken and egg question because the cost of production is already so high and the farmer is not remunerated at that level. The farmer doesn't see it very economical and farmer cuts corners. And by cutting corners, you're eventually affecting the productivity of the animal. So it's in a negative spiral. The only way this can change is when dairy farmers seriously get into dairying as a core profession. They consider dairying as an industry and not as a side business. And when that happens, we see this shift happening. For example, in states like Maharashtra or in parts of Tamil Nadu, we are already seeing dairy farmers who are commercially successful. And we at Heritage, we are trying to take out the best practices from these farms and cross-pollinate so that we are able to create a new breed of entrepreneurs in the dairying sector. And we have been so far successful. About 10% of our milk today is coming from such dairy farmers. And we are encouraging more and more such farmers to emerge who will create these high-yielding animals.
Sir, are changing food habits resulting in higher consumption of milk and milk products such as paneer, cheese, and ice cream?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. There are many factors which are driving this. But before I speak about that, maybe I can give you a context in terms of the consumption patterns in the country. I told you about 45% of the milk that gets produced is for captive consumption, which actually is really big, right? And because of which, if you look at the dairy consumption in rural markets, we see it's close to about 500 gram per capita. So that's really strong. Whereas on the urban side, the per capita consumption even today is only around 400 grams per person. So, urban consumption is far lower than rural consumption. Yeah. One primary factor is, the producer consumption. There is no economics involved. So hence they produce, they consume. So that could be one reason. The other reason is, in the urban areas, what we are seeing is the consumption basket or a consumer basket gets split across multiple sectors. For example, a recent study on the household consumption expenditure by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation showed that while processed food contribution in the consumption basket increased from 8.9% to about 10.64%. That's close to about 1.8 percentage increase in the basket. Dairy had only increased from 7.35 to 8.3%. So dairy contribution in an urban consumer's basket is still smaller than the processed food and beverage consumption. It just shows the enormous potential that the sector has in driving growth in the future. So just calling out a few numbers before I proceed further. One, on a per capita basis, the urban consumer is consuming only 400 grams per capita. And in terms of percentage consumption, it is still at around 8.3 percentage compared to 10.6 percentage of processed food. Now, coming to the primary drivers of change, the first and foremost is consumers are getting far more conscious about the food they eat. They are far more conscious about the nutritional content in the food. Concepts such as probiotics and proteins are growing faster than you can ever imagine. Like if I could just give an example, buttermilk is a large product for our company. Just in under 1 year, since we launched probiotic buttermilk, it is already contributing about 15% of all the buttermilk that we sell. So we've been selling buttermilk for 15, 16 years. In just 1 year, probiotic buttermilk has contributed about 15% of this. This shows the potential that is there for highly nutritious foods. The second is the emergence of organized retail. Organized retail, such as e-commerce, quick commerce, modern trade, which today contributes anywhere between 15 to 18% of the industry sales, is helping increase the availability and affordability of the products. The consumer is able to have a wider choice of goods today, which was probably not the case maybe 5 years ago when you walk into a typical kirana store or traditional retail store in the neighborhood. By about 10 o'clock, most of the dairy products are finished. You need to be an early bird to get your quota of milk. That is changing today, right? The third is the increasing spending capacity of the consumers, which is what is probably driving them to try out new occasions. You can imagine, Mr. Subramani, that if a consumer is consuming only 400 grams per capita or per day, 400 grams is just 2 cups of tea or coffee, right? So if the person is already having 2 cups of coffee, which means that there is nothing else that the person is consuming, right? So where is he consuming a curd, or where is he consuming a buttermilk, or where is he consuming a paneer, or where is he consuming a cup of yogurt for indulgence, or ice cream for that matter, or a dairy beverage like a flavored milk or a milkshake instead of a carbonated beverage. So the opportunity is immense. And with consumers having increasing spending capacity, we see many of these newer occasions developing out. This is what is driving the growth that we are seeing on the consumption side.
So, and finally, how do you see the dairy sector's future over the next couple of years, and what are the reasons?
Like I said, sir, I believe that the sector has just scratched its surface. With just 2 cups of coffee, if you're at 400 grams, and if all of you are going to eat curd every day or a yogurt, that itself is going to drive tremendous growth, right? Now, if you look at the organized retail today, the penetration of organized industry, which includes the cooperatives as well as the private side, right? Including brands such as Amul and Arokya and Heritage Foods and all of us put together. The reach in terms of the population in India is still under 30%. The industry is not reaching more than 30% of the population. A large percentage still sits in the unorganized sector, right? So this 30% definitely cannot remain at that level, right? If you take any industry for that matter, whether it is FMCG or FMCD, the penetration of the industry is much higher. So it must be around 70% or 80%. In a country where mobile penetration is almost nearly 100%, dairy industry, organized industry at 30% is far too low. So that is the primary driver. Secondly, like I said, at 30% penetration, the per capita consumption is just 400 grams. That is just two cups of coffee. We believe strongly that in the next few years, consumers will have many more occasions and many more products that they will consume, which we are building. For example, at Heritage, we are seeing tremendous growth in products such as paneer and all. But even when we look at the per capita consumption of paneer today, among the consumers we have, it is just one paneer or one piece of paneer in a month. Even if I make it once a week, we are looking at 4 times growth potential, right? So in every category for that matter, whether it is drinkables, whether it is foods like paneer and curd and cheese, or whether it is sweets or ghee for that matter, we see tremendous potential in the years to come.
Thank you very much for your insightful and interesting views, Mr. Srideep Kesavan.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you all listeners for tuning in. Until we meet in our next episode, this is Subramani Ra Mancombu signing off. Bye.